Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another meeting of the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. It is May 17th, and we are happy to have tonight with us Steven Judd, who's going to be talking about going from one-liners to writing formal code in the form of scripts and functions. But let me welcome in my co-host. How are you, Phil?
I'm doing well.
All right, and so I am super excited. I love when we do the core concept stuff because I think there's a never-ending need to cover all the best practices, the basics, and all that stuff. And so I'm super excited to hear what Steven has to say. So with that, how about we welcome in our guest tonight? Hey, Steven, how are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Hey, there's something on your head. I'm not sure what that is.
There you go.
Good timing.
RTPSUG, baby.
PowerShell for life or forever.
That's right. PowerShell forever. I kind of established a personality with my hat, so I thought I'd bring it in. Just, finish off.
All right. So I did a little foreshadowing there. What are we going to be talking about tonight?
So tonight we are going to be talking about exactly what you said. I'm going to kind of walk through the process of taking a command. Like, you always start with a problem. Like, I have a problem, and PowerShell is my go-to tool for solving my problems. When I'm out about in real life, it's kind of problematic for me because I don't have PowerShell with me on my phone yet. But, when I'm trying to do corporate problems or technical problems at home, I go to PowerShell. So I got my problem. I got PowerShell. I'm going to start by entering a command. And then after I run that command, see what my results are. And then I'm going to kind of work my way through the evolution of a script. And that's what the talk is called. It's the evolution of PowerShell.
Awesome. And so I don't know if you have any slides. If you do, great. If you don't,
I do have slides.
Let everybody know, for the people at home who don't attend our meetings on a regular basis, who you are and what your background is. But other than that, man, take it away. I'm excited to see what you have to share tonight.
All right. Well, let me get the screen sharing going here then, because I cover who I am and all that. This evening, we're talking about how do you take your PowerShell scripts from console to script to function. So here I am talking to you. Let me get, if I could focus here on this thing so it'll slide through. There we go. Who am I? I am Steven Judd. I'm a multi-year, multi-discipline IT pro. I'm also a PowerShell enthusiast, which is helpful if you're going to talk to a PowerShell user group, right? And you probably have figured out by now that I am a dad joke enthusiast. Although there is a little secret thing that most people don't know about me that I'm going to let you guys get on now. I'm also a fashion icon. No? Okay, maybe not. Yeah, that's kind of the reaction I normally get. I'm not a fashion icon. Look at the hat. I mean, come on. All right, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the problem, because we're going to start with the problem and we're going to try and solve it. And then from that problem, we're going to look at a console-based solution. From the console-based solution, we're going to write a script that came from the one-liner that we wrote in order to solve the problem. Then there's the fancification of the script. We're going to take that script and we're going to make it awesome, or at least more awesome. Then we roll into the function. So function is a very specific type of script, and we're going to go to that next, because this is the evolution of our script. Then we have the advanced function. Well, if you're going to write a function, you might as well make it an advanced function. And then we'll get to the final product. And final is definitely in quotes, because is anything really ever final? I know I keep tweaking my code that I go look at it from the past, and I go, oof, who wrote this? Oh yeah, this guy. I wrote that. All right, so the problem. What is our problem we're going to solve is our sample here. So we have an organization that's using Proofpoint to protect their email from malware and phishing attacks, just like the bullet says. When Proofpoint protects the email, it rewrites the URLs so that if they're deemed to be malicious, they are able to be blocked before the PC goes to the malicious sites. So the first email comes in, get a bad URL, the Proofpoint administrators go, oh, that's bad. So they can mark that URL, and so then any other URLs that come in that's the same URL can be condemned by Proofpoint. And then they will go to a page that says, whoa, stop. This is not where you want to be. Okay. Proofpoint's not unique in this. You may have a tool that does this as well. For example, Outlook.com rewrites the links via safe links. And so, you can see your rewrites there. We're just using Proofpoint for this example. So here's the problem. It is hard to read and work with the bloated URLs if you want to review, verify, or share the original URL. Because Proofpoint's going to put a lot of extra material on that URL that you're not wanting to use. Okay, so you've got a bloated URL. You might call the bloated URLs from the email burly, for example. No? All right. And see, this is the problem with everyone being on mute, is I can't hear when people are like, ooh, or no.
All right, I'll come off mute so I get my groans.
Yes, thank you. And if everyone pulls the sad trombone, I'm going to kick you out of the meeting.
Listen to the PowerShell podcast for the understanding of what that's all.
I'm just saying, you crack out a trumpet, Steve. I know you're out there. All right. So here's an example email. Some of the content wiped out for obvious reasons. So the email comes from myself to myself, because that's how I remember to do things. I send myself emails. And it says, check out my GitHub repo. And there is the URL. And this looks very normal and it's fine. However, if you hover your mouse over that URL that I have now highlighted in red, this is what you get. And so you actually see the URL. Now, how many do you think of the standard users are hovering over all the URLs before they click on them? Yeah, no, they're not. And they're not hovering and then reading them and seeing. And then some of the URLs get like super long and no one reads that stuff anyway. But that's the whole point here. Now, in the URL defense, you can see that inside there's the same URL. It's the same. And it's surrounded by these two double underscores. Aha. So now it makes it easy and obvious what we're going to do to solve this problem, right? Yep. We're going to look for those double underscores. So for those people who are not keen on PowerShell and don't want to do things the console way, there's the UI way. So you alternate click the link. It is alternate clicking because we got to make sure that the 10% aren't lefty out, right?
Oh,
yes. You're welcome.
you're welcome.
So you select copy link address after you alternate click. And this assumes you're using the Outlook web interface. There's other things that will be in there, copy link, whatever. And then you open Notepad, and then you use Notepad because it's fast and ubiquitous and we like living off the land. And then you paste the URL, and then you select the URL inside the rewritten URL because you're good with the mouse or you use the keyboard or whatever. And then you copy the URL, and then you paste the URL and whatever. And then finally you go see a doctor for your repetitive stress injuries that you will eventually get because you're doing this all the time. No, thank you. No, thank you. So since no, thank you, we're going to do level 1. We're going to go to the PowerShell command. So let's get that URL using PowerShell. Yes, of course, there's other ways, but we're intelligent and clever people, and we do things the right way by using PowerShell. To the console.
Go, Batman, go.
That's right. All right, so to the console means, I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to do here so you guys can't see what I'm doing. All right, so this is my repo. Got SJ URL defense here, and I'm on the initial branch, and I've got console command and run console command. I wonder which one we should do. Let's do run console command. All right, so we have an example URL protected by URL defense. Oh, before I go too much farther, is that big enough for everyone to read okay?
Yeah, I think that looks good. Great.
All right, sweet. All right, so I'm playing a little game here with the console and the output, and I'm using wait debugger here to kind of stop the script so that I can talk through it. And so what you're getting as the comment up at the top, and then a command that's going to be executed And then you get the double lines to tell you that's the end of the command. Okay, so just kind of giving you the lay of the land for what I'm doing here. And then now that it's gone to wait debugger, I'm going to press C so it continues on. So here's our URL. We're going to take our long URL that we had before. We're going to put it into the $URL variable. Continue on, please. So we're going to make sure the URL is pulled from the variable by using the double underscore. So I'm going to take the URL and I'm going to pipe it into select string. And then I'm going to give it my regular expression. Now, does anyone have any comments about what I'm doing here, perchance? No?
Well,
Is this a good thing to do by doing the command? URL, pipe, SLS, etc.? I mean, it works. Well, I'm fishing for a comment. Let's see if I can get it.
well, it's fine for you if you know what you're doing because you're using a bunch of abbreviations.
Thank you.
Writing this code for someone else, they probably don't know what SLS means.
Right.
And it's harder to get the results you want out of the output from SLS. Easier with
Good job, Sean.
with dash match.
Yep. All right. So these are all very good points, and I'm glad that you brought them up because that's exactly right. When I am at the console, I abbreviate like a maniac because I am trying to get, it's not quite code golf, but I abbreviate like crazy. I use positional parameters. I use aliases. I don't type out the full parameter names if I know that there's uniqueness. So what you're going to see as I go through the console is like some super short stuff. So just recognize that this is how I work. I don't do full commands at the prompt. Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get the full code once we get to the script part, right? All right, so the other point here is that because I'm using PowerShell 7, the select string highlights what the match is. So it output HTTPS, URL defense, etc. And then it highlighted what matched my select string. Okay, just note that. So let's continue on to the next command. So we're going to check what's contained in the object by checking SLS. So I take select string and I pipe it into get member. That's what the GM is. And I'm just pulling back the properties. And I'm selecting very specific things that I want to see. And so I can see that I've got context and file name, lowercase, line number, matches. Matches is interesting because matches will be what we're going to use in order to find out, did it match my regular expression? All right, next. So we'll look inside the matches property. So I pipe that into select matches and I get matches with curly braces and a 0. And something's not right. Oh yeah, that's right. Matches is an object. So we need to expand the object. So we select expand property matches. All right, so now I can see that its groups is the curly braces 0, and success, etc. But what I'm paying attention to is the value. The value is what I wanted to get from this. Also, did you know that this will expand the property? So instead of having to type select-exp, which is what you need for expand, if you're doing the shortest characters possible, or you tab complete, you can just do % matches, and it'll give you the expanded property that you just put in there. Slick little trick. Okay, next. The value property has the URL, which is what I'm looking for. So I expand matches and I select the value and I get that. That's cool, but it's still the value object. I want the value just by itself. So I'm going to put that in parentheses and I'm going to do the value parameter on it. Notice after % matches, there's the closing of the parentheses and dot value. So I'm calling it directly. And now I got my result. Sweet. It's kind of what I was looking for. But now I want to remove the double underscores. So I use the replace method. Or operator, excuse me. Use the replace operator to replace double underscores with null. And there you go. Sweet. I'm done, right? Yes. Almost done. Because I think about things that could go wrong. Potential problem would be if the URL had double underscores inside the outside double underscores. Now, would it? I don't know, but URLs are weird. They do all kinds of things. So let's test it. Notice on this time, I've got a double underscore between Steven and Judd in the middle of the URL. So I make sure the select string still works, and you can see the problem. Now, if you run this in PowerShell 5, you won't get that highlight, so you still get the result back, and you're like, sweet, I've got what I needed. PowerShell 7 shows you, you've got a problem. And you can check it by just seeing what the value is, and now you can see both in PowerShell 5 and PowerShell 7 that it's busted. So let's fix the regex. Here's the previous command. Here's what actually is going to work. Notice the question mark there after the asterisk. Now, this isn't a regex session, and I know how much Mike loves regex, but I'm just going to tell you that one is return back greedy, which means get them all, and the other one says, nope, stop as soon as you find the first instance. So we're going to pull it all back now.
All right, hold on.
Okay.
So first of all, you're doing fantastic. I love this. All right, I love your demo. I just wanted to slow down and ask if anybody on the remote or in the room has any questions about what he's done so far, so you don't get too lost if he's done something you just don't understand. Because the regex can be confusing, and I know he's not trying to focus on the regex, but if it's not something you understand, maybe you won't understand it later on. So any questions about what Steven's doing to date? And if not, we can move on. I just want to make sure everybody is okay. We're good? All right. Sorry, Steven. I just wanted to give...
No, that's fine. I'm glad you stopped me, because I didn't notice over here on my monitor, you guys can't see, the chat had scrolled off, and I needed to get to the bottom. So now I can keep an eye on it. All right, so back to the regex. Now it's going to capture the whole thing, because it's saying go to the beginning and go to the last one. And I'll give you this quick explanation for those that may not have felt comfortable explaining it. After select string, I've got the single quote saying, all right, this is my string I'm going to look for. And the underscores are specific, and then the dot means any character. And then the asterisk means 0 or infinite number of times, not truly infinite, but as many as you can get, and then 2 more underscores. So that's why it pulled back the double underscore HTTPS, the rest, Steven underscore Judd, the rest, all the way to the ending double underscores. All right, so let's continue on, because now we want to replace and fail. Because now if we use the replace operator, it's going to replace all of them, including the one in the middle. Well, that's not what I wanted either. This is the process that I go through when I'm at the console and I'm working on things. I'm like, yeah, I had this. Oh, wait, fail. All right, I'm going to do this. Oh, wait, that didn't work. So how do we get around this? Well, we use substring. We're going to remove the first 2 characters and the last 2, because we know that the URL will start and end with the underscores, because that's what matches our regex. Our regex will not match unless there's a double underscore at the beginning and a double underscore at the end. So here's the command. Notice I've got the same thing all the way up to dot value, and then I do dot substring. The first value of substring is how many characters in do you want to go? So we're going to go in 2. Then I'm saying take the URL, pipe it to select string again, get the length of that, and subtract 4. Because I need to get the last 2, but I'm going into, so I have to get 4. It's math. Yuck. Anyway, notice the result. It got rid of the double underscores on both ends. Or if you don't like to expand properties, you just want to call them directly, here's another way to do it. This is the way that I like to do it, for example. So now I've got dot matches, dot value, dot substring. And then the next command where I'm trying to get the length, it's dot matches, dot value, dot length. Because if you have really good memory and you want to go all the way back to when I did the get member, length is one of the values that comes from the the matches object that select string pops out. All right. Or you don't like running select string twice, so you use out variable. Here's another way to skin this cat. So this time I'm saying for the first command, out variable into search result, and then give me the matches value substring. But then when I'm trying to get the length, I'm passing in, search result pipe to matches, and then get the length property and subtract 4. Notice I still get the same result. These are all different ways. Okay, fine. You're a single line command cheater and you use the semicolon. I don't care. You got it done, and you got it done with one command. So now you're taking source scope, URL, you're piping that into the variable, then you're passing the variable along into the next command. Okay. Let's see. Do I have anything else, or is that the end? Oh, yeah, but seriously, use this, and this is the best way to do it. Steven's opinion. It's my presentation. You get my opinion. So I take the URL, I pass it in, I pipe it into out variable, OV being the alias for out variable, and then matches value substring to, and then I take the result, because that's my variable, matches length -4. Ta-da! There it is. Oh, sweet. The end. All right. Any questions on all that foolishness there at the end? Which was basically, doesn't matter which way you go, they all at the command prompt get you the same result. I'm looking at the chat, I don't see any questions.
No, I think to go back to what Mike was saying, I think this was really great. And, this whole idea of crawl, walk, run. And, I think that was a lot of information just to, hey, get through all of that, the objective, and then to get all to those places. And then I think, we should, make sure that everybody is comfortable with pretty much everything that went down in those lines, so that I guess when you're going to move to the next stage of, hey, we're going to just take all of that, like a lot of work. So I think some people look at that and going, holy moly, that was a lot. And going, hey, that's what automation's all about. We're going to turn this on fire and make it happen. Is that where we're going?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Steven?
Yeah, go ahead.
Putting my regex geek hat on, did you try or would have considered using a capture group with a question mark exclamation mark colon for both the initial double underscore and the final double underscore, so you didn't have to do any other substringing and that kind of stuff?
Yes, could have done that. That's a great idea.
Well, I think one could have done that, but then it gets deep into what regex is all about, and that's kind of beyond.
Exactly. This is the process of how I got to the answer at the console without jumping way too into the deep end. But that's an excellent suggestion, and yes, I would have done that. I probably would have done a capture group for the middle and just taking that directly. So then it would have been matches.groups where the group name is 1, etc.
Right, or name the group itself.
Or name the group, yes. Named capture groups are better for readability.
Oh yeah, love names for skiing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was just getting into the weeds, and I wanted to say before my statement or question that I was putting my regex geek hat on.
Yes,
So
yes, for sure.
I'm muting and going away now.
All right. Well, we're pretty much done with the regex nerditry. We're going to do PowerShell code from here on out. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I guess the idea to remember here is he solved the problem. The problem happened to be something they used regex for. But now that you've solved that problem, he showed how he solved the problem at the console, right? It could have been any problem. He got to a conclusion. And so now we're going to take that conclusion and try to build this into more standardized programmable code that you can rerun. And so, as Steven just said, it'll be less about the regex and the solution, the problem now, and more about how to build a code base around what he did.
Sweet. Yep, exactly. Thanks, Mike. So, please note that the method I used to play all the commands return the objects to the same scope because I was running it all from one script. So that's why I did some of the foolishness from the get member command. If you happen to look at that get member command, you're like, why did he pipe that out and expand and format table and all that stuff? It's just the nature of the code and how it was running in one script. Okay, I just wanted to mention that in case. All right, level 2. Oh, wait, before I go to level 2, I wanted to show you this. So here's the code I was using in order to do that demonstration. Let me get this out of the way and shrink this some because this is way too big. There we go. So I went and got the console command PS1, and then I got myself a prediction source because as I was hitting C's in my preparation for this, I kept getting my predictions from PS readline. I wanted that to go away. So see what I did? I put this prediction into the global variable. Then I set the prediction source to none. Like, okay, I don't want that anymore. Then I did clear host, and then for each line in the content, if the line matched a pound key, so I was commenting out the line, then I wrote the line foreground colored green. That's how I was able to get the green text. And then I slept for 2 seconds and then continued on. If it wasn't a commented line, then it went to this, where it did the invoke expression. Oops, get that little pop out of the way. I also put PS on the beginning to show that this was a command. Just a little nicety I put in there. And then I executed the command and I piped it to outhost. That way I made sure it actually showed up on the console. And then I got the window width and I wrote the underscore or the equal signs all the way across the window. Got myself a couple blank lines, slept for 2 seconds, and then popped wait debugger. Then I got another clear host, went again through each one of those. Finally, at the end, I set my PS prediction source back because don't be abusive to your users. If you're going to make changes to their environment, make sure you capture what they had and put it back. There's also some risk here because if the script blows up in the middle, you're going to lose what they had. That's one of the reasons why I chose to use global. Now that I've told you why I did global, don't use global. It's dangerous. Okay? We're not here to talk about global variables, but I strongly encourage people not to use global. Now, when we get into our scripts and functions, you're going to see that we don't need that stuff anymore. Oh, just for fun, here's the console commands. And this is how I did it. Cool. All right, cool. Back to the presentation. Level 2. You feel that energy just kind of like go up just a little bit? Now we're going to script this chunk because there is no way you're going to want to be doing your URL and then piping it into a select string and then go get that thing every time. That's ridiculous. So we're going to convert our command to a script instead of having to remember the proper command syntax and type the entire command every time you need to expand a URL. So, to the code. Here's my script. Here it is. I need terminal so that I can change my branch. Good, check out script. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to script. There we go. All right, so now my code just changed. This is no longer available. And I have return URL from URL defense. So this script is intended, ooh, it scrolls right off the side. Let me get the Explorer out of the way. And that kind of goes off. Is that the end? Nope, this thing scrolls off. Apologize for that going off the side. I'll try and...
There's a word wrap feature I think you put on the view.
Yeah, I don't generally like word wrap, but I'm going to use it because I didn't check that. All right, here we go. That'll work. That works for me. So this script is intended to run after copying the URL to clipboard. So that's why this command right here is set clipboard value, and it goes and gets it. But you don't want to use set clipboard value all the time, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this right here and F8 that so that it runs, and I now have a URL in my clipboard. Because remember, in the UI, we're like right-clicking and getting the URL. So now we're going to get that URL, and then we're going to say, okay, take the URL from the clipboard. Oop, easy on the scrolling there. And then if not URL, write an error, nothing in the clipboard. All right. I probably shouldn't have done my clipboard first, because then I can't show you that I actually put error handling in my script, believe it or not. And then let's get this out of the way a little bit farther here. There we go. And then I'm going to take my URL, I'm going to do the select string, out variable, etc. Now notice no aliases here, right? And out variable search result matches value substring, search result matches length. Okay. All right. So in order to make my demo go right, I'm going to do set. Now remember, I told you I abbreviated it like a maniac. Now if I do get clipboard, there's nothing in there. So let's run this. Now, I'm keyboard man. I don't like going up here and hitting play and run and finding it through the menus and whatever. That's why I turn on screencasting so that I can press F5. You can see that I pressed F5 and it runs the code. And it tells me, hey, you messed up. There's nothing in the clipboard. Please copy the URL defense string first. Okay, fine. I'll do that. Let's just undo that so I can S8. I can reset it and run. There we go. There it is. That's the script. You just took what you did after you experimented at the console, figured out how to do it, and you put it into a file. And now anytime you want, you just copy your clipboard, or you copy your URL into clipboard, you run your return URL from URL defense PS1 script, and boom, got it. Okay. Any questions on script? This is pretty simple, so I wouldn't expect any. Let's continue on. This may be as far as you want to go. That's okay, because working code is working code. I tell people this all the time. Don't be ashamed of your code. If it works and it does what you want it to do, what is wrong with that? Okay? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There are some drawbacks to this, though. You need to know where the script is to call it. Because if you're not in the directory where that script is, it's not going to be a command that you can just run. Okay? And you gotta know the whole path if you're not in that directory as well. Some drawbacks. There's no help text to explain what it does, and so if you share this script with another person, that person's going to have to read the code in order to know how to use it. So, yeah, that's a drawback. Okay, I cheated a bit because I put some stuff in mine so that I could get my demo to work, but you know what I mean. If you just put the code in there, you're leaving someone in the lurch. And you must have the URL in the clipboard for the script to work properly. So those are our drawbacks for level 2 script. Level 3. We feel a little more energy here. So we're going to add some parameters to our script. If you parameterize your script, it'll make it more flexible for you and everyone else. It's not just, you're not just helping yourself out, you're helping everyone you share this with, because you want to share your scripts, right? So to the code. Psych. You're expecting Batman. Let me do this. So I have to switch my branch. Thank you, brain, for telling me what I wanted to get there. This time we're going to do check out script with parameter. Please commit your changes or stash them, because I was foolish enough to make some changes and it saved it. Oh, this is where I screwed up my own presentation. All right, here we go. Source control, changes, discard all changes, Discard. Thank you. It's so much easier to do this in VS Code. Thank you, VS Code. There we go. All right. Get that out of the way. Now, I kept the same name. So the file changed without us actually seeing it change. Didn't do anything here, but now we can look at the code. And the code now has a parameter block. And the first parameter is the URL. Let's see. Yeah, okay, you can see my mouse moving here. So you got the URL. I was silly and I put this as a comment underneath so I'd have a default value for it. Because when you're testing, it's just easier to do this, and then I commented out. So ignore all that green text. It's supposed to be null or empty, or not null or empty, and it's in position 0. That's a little redundant because it's the first one and it's the only one, but I put it in the code anyway. So then if URL has a value, we say URL delimiter, we pipe it in here, we're getting the value, and then we remove the delimiters at the beginning and the end of the URL. So we substring, notice this time I'm saying start at 0 and go to 2. If that equals double underscore, then substring 2. If you don't put a value on here at the end, it says go forward 2 and then go to the end. And then if substring URL delimiter length -2 equals double underscore, then length -2. Okay, this time it's -2 because I rewrote URL delimiter. Now, what does this do for us? Now it doesn't necessarily have to have the double underscores on either end, but yes, it does because my regex demands it. I just did this to show, hey, I'm checking to see if it's still got the double underscores at the beginning and at the end. All right, so here's my examples. So we'll run each one of these examples. So here's my first one. I'm just going to highlight in F8 and have this run. We'll give us a little more space here so you can see that it is working. This is where scrolling gets a little challenging when you're using a scroll wheel and it's moving 2 or 3 lines at a time. There we go. So I ran set clipboard value this, and then I scrolled too far, didn't I? Yep, I did. And that got burned by it. Come on. Where's the bottom? There it is. All right. Good thing no one can see me sweat. Return URL from defense, and then I passed it the URL, and I got the URL result. Okay, that's kind of exactly what we were doing. But what happens if I do this? I'm going to pass it blank. Okay, go. Check it out. It says, hey, I can't validate the argument. And the reason is because up at the top, I had the validate not null or empty. That's cool. What will this do? How about nothing? No error, also no result. Notice how I put what in here? Okay, what about this? I'm going to explain that in just a second. What does this do? Yeah, you cannot call a method on a null-valued expression. The reason is, when it's looking for the delimiter, it says nope, because it just blows right past this. This is not actually a check. It's just saying, give me the value. Well, when that's not there, this becomes null, then it goes to null, and it does substring on null and blows up, and then it does it again. So that's why we're getting the red text. So we've got a script. It has a parameter block, and it has a little more flexibility, but it doesn't have any defense for people messing up. Let's get back to that what. Now, does anyone know why line 20 gave us an error, but line 21 did not? I should say anyone besides Sean, because Sean's going to know this for sure.
And while you're waiting for an answer, I believe we have a question in the chat from Cody. He's got a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Is the question typed into the chat?
He had his hand up, but then I think he just took it down, so maybe not anymore.
Okay. All right, cool. Looking at the chat. Has parameter not mandatory? Yes, that is one thing that is true. The parameter is not mandatory. But the reason that mandatory would affect this is because I didn't pass it the parameter at all here, it doesn't actually validate whether it's null or empty. It would only validate it if I had the URL on there like this one does. If you don't pass it, so if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'm going to put validate not null or empty, then you better enforce that that parameter is in use. And that was where those guys are right. You need to set it to mandatory. Okay. Any questions other than that? No problem, Cody. Back to our presentation. All right, so we saw some things that I think are good ideas. I put the examples in my test into the script. Now when I'm coding it, I have my steps that I can say, all right, try this, try this. If I know all those work, then I know my code works. If one doesn't work, I know where I need to work on it and put some defense in there. I already talked about this, but did you note the different method of finding and removing the underscores? I just did that to show another way. Also, it's easier to read and understand for less advanced PowerShell users. When you're doing that versus doing a big blob long code line and you're trimming off the front and you're doing a link for this using substring, it's a little harder to read. If you're reading that code, I think it makes it easier to read. Now the question is this actually better than level 2? Sure could use some error handling. All right, level 4, my favorite level for sure. Talking about functions, because functions rule. So if functions are going to rule, we have to have rules for functions. Functions do one thing and one thing only. Now this isn't a hard and fast rule, but it is a good rule. So please, make it do one thing and one thing only. It needs to be a focused solution. It should take input. I love functions because you can pass things into them and they'll do their one thing and then give you a result. Speaking of giving you a result, you want it to return an object. Specifically, an object that you could possibly use for your next command that you want to create. And so then you start chaining your commands together. And so make sure you're thinking about, okay, what properties is this object going to have that I want to have? All right, to the code. I brought it back. I entertain myself.
All right, I got a question.
It's pretty easy.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
All right, so on your last slide, you said functions rule, and then you had some rules for the functions, which I would consider sort of guidelines, right? Or things that you should follow when you're making functions. But in your opinion, why do you prefer functions? What is the thing about functions that you like?
Okay.
Why do they rule?
Why do the functions rule? Let's look at the code and I'll talk through it.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's get over to our function. Killed that file because now I've renamed it again. And now my function has a verb noun style name. Because if you're going to write a function, you want it to follow verb noun. And so now I say get original URL from URL defense PS1. And that's also the name of my function. Okay? Got the parameters. This time I went with mandatory. Position is still 0. Validate not null or empty will now work. And here's my URL. Code. Let me get this window out the way and get this out of the way. Thank you. If we have a URL, it's the same code. It's the same code. Except if URL is blank, I wrote an else in here. So now I've got URL value doesn't contain the proper double underscore double unders. Oh, sweet. Look, I've got examples. Now, here's the fun when you're doing a function. Let me run this. Okay. I just ran it. Nothing happened. Well, it's because it's inside a function. There's no output because I didn't pass it anything. But now for my examples, I can just uncomment this one, run it again. It's going to load the function. And then when it gets to my example, it's going to do what I just told it to do. So here it goes. And there's my output. Okay. Now I can comment that one out, uncomment this one, and press F5, and it'll do the next one. All right, so it gives me the thing, hey, I can't validate on URL. Now, this validation error, where it says line 26 is the error, it's coming from this validate not null or empty. Okay, that's good. So now we're going to send it the blank and watch what it does. And this time it says, hey, mandatory. You must put something in here. I'm not going to run that. I'm going to step out of that, Shift F5 and stop. Because my very next one tests whether I send it junk. So I press F5 on that one. It's the same stuff we were doing before. Oops. Here's what I forgot to do. I forgot to Control C out of that. So that my, what is this called? My extension, my command processor down here knows what to do. Thank you. All right, so this time it says, hey, you sent me blah. This URL value does not contain the proper double underscore delimiters. That was my error message from right here. Okay, turn that off. And then finally, I'm going to do these two at once. So I'm going to do set clipboard, and then I'm going to do get original URL, get clipboard. Run. Same result. I know it works. There it is. Now, that's useful for doing some quick testing, etc., etc. I'm now going to Control Z my way all the way back to the beginning. I can't Control Z my way all the way back to the beginning. This thing's gonna try and burn me on that GitHub repo again, but this time I'm ready for you. All right, the point that Mike was asking about is why do a function? The thing that you can do with a function that I like better than scripts, my favorite thing is what's known as the PowerShell scope and where the scope of your code is running. And when it's running inside the script scope, you're going to wind up with variables and etc. in the scope in which it runs. And if you're running it in a console, they're going to show up again. When you run these in a function, they go into a function scope. So now the URL with delimiter function cannot pollute my scope with other variables. I feel like I'm not explaining this very well, so let me see if I can do a quick demonstration. See what we have here. All right, so I am in the function scope, and I'm going to say, I want to do get variable. And I know one of my variables has URL in it, so I'm going to do URL star, and I don't have it. Okay, so now I'm going to load get original into my console here. Actually, I need to do my edit before I do this so it'll actually run something. We'll do the first one. Okay, back to here. So now I'm going to do get original and run. Okay. Now if I do $, or I want to do no, I don't want to do that. What am I doing? I want to do get variable URL. It's not there. That's the thing I like the most about functions. And this is actually something that I do, which I've seen some people do, but not as many people do as I would like to see, is if you're writing a script, go ahead and convert it to a function and get the value from scoping. So like if this was my script, I would write a function up at the top, and then I would call it with the parameters that I wanted it to have here. And so then every time this thing is run, it would load the function, and then run the function. It would output me my results, and then it would be done. It leaves you with a much cleaner result in the console. Steven's opinion.
You're saying that rather than dot sourcing the function and just using it from memory?
So that's the other way to do it. What I'm saying is do it this way if you're going to write a script. So this replaces a script. If you're going to do it as a function, then you should dot source it. You should not send it commands where it actually will execute. You want it to just load and be available to you.
Yeah, okay.
Let me undo this because this is going to cause me some problems. So let's see, did I do it? I'm out of there. Let me get back over here. So now that I've got this thing where it'll just, if I run it again, because I've set it back up, it doesn't do anything. Plus it doesn't stay in memory. So if I do get original from URL defense, there's no function here where it stays with me. Now, if I dot source it, like Mike said, now I'm going to load it into memory. Let me go up one level just so you can see that if I do get original, I'm going to tab complete, and now I've got my URL. I'm going to show you that this still says, hey, you didn't do it right. All right, fine. I'll give you double underscore at the beginning, double underscore at the end, go, and now I've got it back. That's the other thing about functions that I really like is when you dot source them, they're now available wherever you are. Okay, let's see. I'm looking over at the chat. I think I've lost control of the chat because conversations are going on. Does anyone have any questions before I move back to the slide?
I wanted you to continue on, but Cody was asking about actually making your URL parameter a multiple part. And so to do that, I don't know if you're going to get there, but I wanted to say it's absolutely possible, and you just got to iterate through it. So you can pass it multiple URLs and then have it give you multiple URLs back.
Oh, yeah, multiple URLs. All right, so that would be an advanced function. So let's continue on.
So before you get to that, does anybody not understand the concept of dot sourcing, right? Because I don't know that we're going to come back to that. Everybody okay on dot sourcing? Okay.
And let's see. Oh, I don't need to do this yet. I got to do it when I'm ready. All right, so we looked at this. So notice how the function code was almost identical in the script with parameters code. So why create a function? Well, we covered that. Question is, did I follow the rules? So this thing does one thing and one thing only. You pass it a URL, it returns a URL. It takes input, it returns an object. Well, the object happens to be string, but it does return an object. And it only has one value, so it didn't make sense to try and get fancy with a custom object. So yes, I followed the rules. All right, now we're into the advanced PowerShell function. All right, are you ready? Hoping that icon kind of shows you what's up. To the code. Nothing? Nothing. See, I've got you triggered. You don't know when it's going to come, when it's not. All right, so this time we're going to go check out the advanced function. What happened here? We got some weirdness. No, I do not want to save those changes. We're going to go back over here. Yes. Yes. The advanced function. The advanced function is important because it has help. I put in help. There's a synopsis. There's a description. I have examples. Notice my examples are very similar to my tests. In fact, they're almost identical. I have inputs. This takes a string. I have outputs. It also outputs a string. And I have a link. I went ahead and put a link to where the code is. And then what I like to do is in the notes section, I start to say, hey, here's some stuff I did to this. As I'm iterating through it, I'll start putting these in the notes. Now, it's also in my Git repo, but sometimes these things move away from your Git repo. So it's kind of nice to know what the evolution of things are. So that if someone has a question, they can be like, hey, I don't understand why you did this. Well, it's in your notes. All right, well, let's look at our parameter block. Now notice this time I've gone from it all being in one place to being on multiple lines. Still got validate, not null or empty. Now I have a begin block. Now the question was, can you pass more than one URL? I have now changed my string right here where you can see to an array. So yes, I can have more than one. Begin block is unimportant. I'm not doing anything to prep this because it's pretty simple. Watch the scrolling. Next up is process block. So process is going to go through every one that you pass through on the pipeline. Very next thing I do is I go to for each item in URL because I define this as value from pipeline. They'll come in one at a time. And because I defined it as an array, you can do my command name, which is up at the top, get original from URL defense, space, dash, URL, space, and then pass it in an array. So you can pass it multiple URLs, as many as you think you need to cover. And then it will then go into the for each item for that array. So for each item in URL, we're getting used to this. Okay, do the select string, do this. Notice what I'm doing this time. So I've already forgotten who jumped in and said, did you do capture groups? Yes, I did capture groups. Again, I'm not trying to explain the regex. I'm just showing you I'm getting more advanced. For those of you that are ready, or you can read regex, you're seeing what I'm doing. Okay? So now I'm saying if the match group 2, if 0 is all of it, 1 is the first one, 2 is this one. If that exists, then I get the delimiters out of there. Okay, otherwise the URL is not from URL defense. Wait, how did I get URL defense? Well, that was from this having urldefense.com in my first capture group. So I'm now checking to make sure you're giving me a valid URL that comes from URL defense that has double underscores, and I'm using that to determine what I should return. Okay, here we go. I'm looking at this, trying to decide whether this thing returns the object or not. We're going to find out, because I'm looking at this code going, how does this return the object? So, I think it's right here. That threw me off. I love it. All right, test cases. Let's run some of these. Here's what I'm going to do this time. Instead of uncommenting these one at a time and going through them like I did before and getting myself into Git repo challenges and having to do all that stuff, I'm just going to run it so it loads into the console. All right, so now I've got this thing ready to go. I can now check to make sure it's here, get original URL defense, and there it is, and I do dash URL. Yep. And so this time I'm going to say audio just to prove that this will do its thing. Yep, did it twice. Says, hey, that's not right. Hey, that's not right. Okay, but now that I've done that, I can now just do this. Highlight, F8, run it. Yep, if you do that, since it's mandatory, it says, hey, you have to give me something. All right. So now I'm going to take the next one, which has the whole URL, and I get the URL. Does anyone need me to run through all of these? Here's what's interesting. I can take the URL because I'm doing value from pipeline, and I can pipe it through. In order for that to work, I have to have this first one. Let me get that. F8. And now this. F8. Ta-da! Now, of course, it still works on blanks and blahs. Okay. Now, I've gone from simple to advanced. You can kind of see how this thing's kind of evolved its way through, right? Any questions on the advanced one?
So maybe you could just summarize again, forget about the actual code that you wrote, but the benefits you get going from a function to an advanced function.
Okay. Let's see if that's in my slides.
Look at me. It's like I'm throwing you softballs.
Now, I told you the functions rule, right? But only if you design them to rule. So Steven's standard. My slides, it's my standards. This is how I like to do things. The help text with examples and parameter explanation, where your input type is defined and your output type is defined. You have a link if you have one, and you have notes. All of that, when you run get help against your function now, let me jump back over here, get their console back up, and do get help. Actually, I'm going to maximize this so you can see it without it being in this. Get original URL from defense. I always do full. In fact, I put it in my default parameter sets. And here it is. I have examples. I have the explanation. I have everything that your professional, if you will, or your commercial commandlets have. I even have syntax.
We hope to have sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Hope it has. Notice. Yeah. Do you accept pipeline input? Yep. True. Okay. By value, as defined.
I think the encouragement there is that, you saw at this point, we've been growing and growing and growing, and without too much work, you didn't add all this code here, you didn't add all that doc with just a couple little parts, and it just did all that work for you. And so that's the magic, and that's the value that comes along, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. So now I can take this function that I've written and hand it off to someone else and say, hey, this thing's been written. You just got to load it, however they load it. Or you push it out through your internal policy method where you pushing out functions. And so now everyone has this. All you have to do is right-click your URL and send it through the Git clipboard, etc. That's one way to do it. The other thing is you want to have pipeline input, and you want to have array input to a parameter. Because pipelines, although they're awesome and I love them, they can be slow, especially if you're sending a lot of data across the pipeline. So I like to do value from pipeline, but also set an array for whatever it is I'm going to be passing across, so that in the parameter, like you saw me do where I did -URL 1, 2, I'm now passing in an array into my parameter block. Okay. Parameter validation, very important. Basic content checking, you saw I did that. I have some test cases, and I have error handling. So the question I have, which is just an interesting question, is would you choose a different verb? Notice I did get original URL. You might want to disagree with what I did. You might prefer set. You might want reset because you're actually taking a modified URL and you're resetting it back to the original URL. And that one's kind of a stretch, but maybe it's convert or convert from. So you want to do convert from, what is it, proof point URL or URL defense URL, something like that. Point is, use a standard verb, get your function built, make it make sense to you so that you can explain it and you understand it. You thought that was the end. Nope. There's level 6, advanced, published. Okay. So I took level 6 and I put some polish on it and I made some refinements. And so the refinements, I've changed the function name to something shorter. I've added more content to the last help example. And now we're going to go back to the code. If thought I was kind of overusing the Batman thing, so I didn't do it that time. Hit checkout. I wish my typing, and so now I'm going to master. And here we go. Look, my color's even changed. That's because I'm using the Peacock and it saved it into the .vs code. And so now I can see, hey, I'm doing this with blue. Awesome. All right, let me close this. Because I renamed it, my file's gone. Now it's get URL defense URL PS1. That's my function. This out of the way. The help is still the help. Okay. Not too fancy, except this one's a lot longer on the example. And even in the example, I put an example in the example. So you can do a function FURL, furl, to do get defense URL, get clipboard, and then T that object to URL, and then set your clipboard. So if you run this, which I'm telling you to do, your user only has to type furl space, or no, just furl and enter. And as long as they've copied the URL to the clipboard, it's going to pump it off the screen and it's going to set it into the clipboard. So it'll modify your clipboard from the big long URL to the short URL. I thought that was clever. I put it in the help. You may not want to do that. You may want to name yours something else. Fine. I'm just showing you here's what you can do. Then I got my inputs and outputs and the rest, and the code is functionally the same, except my test cases are different because I renamed the function. And I renamed it to something shorter that makes it easier to deal with.
Steven,
Yes.
what is the T object doing on that example you had in the help file there? It's sending it to the, I forgot the two places you said it was going.
Okay. Actually, let's copy this. And let's load it and run it. All right, so I just loaded my function. And now I'm going to paste this here. And I'm going to what I'm doing is I'm creating a new function called furl. And in there I'm saying run get defense URL and get the clipboard URL. Now when it goes to T, when it comes across the pipeline and hits T, and so you think of this as like going to the end of the T junction in a road, and you can go left and you can go right. So it does two things at once. I'm using the variable parameter and I'm saying create the URL variable. Then I'm using the semicolon to get a new command line. Take that URL that you just created on T object and pipe that into set clipboard. Okay, because the first command ends right here, what T object does is T object does whatever you tell it to do. In this case, create this content into the variable URL and continue piping this down the pipeline. So it doesn't end. T object isn't the end of the destination. Okay? And then because of that, because there's nothing else after here, it effectively goes to the command processor, which says, all right, I'm going to pump it out to the console. Then I took the URL and put it in the clipboard. So let's run it. And so now I can do furl, and I better go get a valid URL here so that this function will actually work. Copy. All right, so I just copied that into my clipboard. I don't have to do anything else other than furl and go. It just outputted to screen, like I said, and then when I paste, I've got the URL in my clipboard. That's what that's doing.
Okay.
Yep. I'm all about speed. Remember, when I'm at the console, I want it to be fast. So I did that furl function. It doesn't do proper verb noun, but I don't care because this is for me. I made my adjustments so that I'm fast.
So let me just counter that point by saying Steven is very advanced in his knowledge, right? And so he's able to do a lot of these cool tricks. we all try to incorporate some of these things. And I find, I do this myself, you put something in your code and you know what it does, but you don't remember why you did that. And so it's very important that when you do some of these things in your code, you may want to put a comment to your future self and say, I did this because, or I had this problem from earlier in the script, and this is accounting for that. Because you can understand the command, but why the hell did I create another variable here? What was I trying to do? So,
Yes.
you know, sometimes you need to make notes to yourself for your future self.
Let me show you this as well. I did not want to do that. I wanted to do get help original URL defense. So here's another little tip that I like to do is on my help, the last help example, this one, is the one that I expect to be used the most. The reason I put it last, the help example to be used the most common use of your function, is because when someone does get help, it's the last one they see. It's the easiest one to scroll to. Here's a pro tip for you. So that's what I do with my examples.
So somebody asked in chat, it's like, what would happen if you do help furl? And I don't think you're going to get anything. It won't. There's no, furl was a just generic function.
Right. So furl is get command. It's a function. So if I do help furl, help's going to try to help you because it's going to read the code and go, okay, here's what it is. But notice there's nothing there because it's a one-line command. That's a function.
It's not an advanced function. It doesn't have all those components that we've defined. And so, yeah, it's going to give you empty, effectively. It's not nothing, but it's empty.
All right, so the pro tip I gave you was actually in my slides. Put the most likely to be used example last. So when you run get help examples or get helpful, the last help example is visible or easy to get to with very minimal scrolling. Level 7. Yeah. Can you believe that we're still not at the last level? But it is where we're stopping. Okay. What would I do next to continue enhancing this? Pester tests. I'm not going to cover pester tests. But all of those tests at the bottom of the function should be pester tests. If you don't know what pester is, it's time to get on the Google train and go find out what pester, but it's PowerShell testing. That's what pester is. I would also review other functions and consider grouping them into a module. So maybe I have other functions that are related to manipulating URLs or manipulating output or taking stuff from the clipboard or whatever, and see whether I would combine them into a module. And then I'd set up that module with a build script to run the tests every time it builds so that I know that my code is solid, and to consolidate the code into a single file and to generate the help content and update the PSD1. If you're fairly new or not as advanced to PowerShell, what I said was waf 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 waf. Okay? Don't worry about it. You'll get there. We're here to help you get there. Okay? And then I would publish it to the PowerShell gallery because that's kind of the final destination for a lot of things. And now you're sharing it not just with yourself or your friends or your coworkers, you're now sharing it with the world. And so please don't publish your company's proprietary code. Yeah, I just had to PSA myself there, but yeah, publish it to the gallery. Even if no one else uses it, now you can go do install module from the gallery for your code. This presentation doesn't tell you how to do that either. Other presentations for that. And finally, profit. So let's talk about our decision points and just review that. So we have the command line. Sometimes you just need a command one time. Just punch it in there and be done. You're good. But maybe you want to see if something would work before you invest time coding and documenting. So you do kind of like what I did at the beginning, where I was iterating through and going, how does this work? And once I got it working, I still was tweaking it to see, all right, is this the right way? Is this the best way? Okay. Then on the script, I use scripts to call functions. Don Jones called this controller scripts. I think it's the right way to describe it. You have a script that calls all your functions. The logic of what you're trying to do is in the script. It says, go get this, parse it for this, send it to that, output to here, tell someone I'm done. That's what your controller script does. Each one of those steps in there is a function that accepts input, does its work, does its one thing, and does it well, and then returns you the result. I use these scripts to carry out very specific tasks. And then finally, the function is focus code that I can call from the script or pass objects to in order to do its intended purpose and return an object that can then be passed to other functions as desired. Help text is required. Not technically, but please, please, please put help text in, because without that and without any examples, someone's going to not know how to use your function. And if they find out you wrote it, they'll be like, thank you for the code, but thanks for nothing, because I wanted to understand how it worked, and you made me read all the code. It's expected that these things will have help text, okay? And examples. I'm a big stickler for examples. Closing thoughts. All right, let's close this out. Be sure you understand the problem so your solution actually resolves the problem. Think about your end goal. Where is it you're going to draw the line? Okay, it may be that you can get all fancy with it, but it's not giving you that last line of profit. You want a profit, okay? My end goal solution is almost always to create functions. I told you, I like functions. I even like functions to do the job of a script because of the scoping of where a function runs and how it doesn't pollute my console. I like that. Don't forget to continue to add your skills. So if there's any place in this continuum that you found yourself going, I don't understand where he's going with this, that is your level. That's okay. You have skills already. Remember, you got to that point, but now it's adding to those skills, because you can always add to skills. I'll just self-confess, my pester skills are not very good. I just haven't spent the time to get them really solid. That has been on my to-do list for longer than I care to think about. But I've always gotten to the point where I'm like, this is enough. I don't need that rigor. I'm moving on to the next thing. If I was going to publish modules, then pester really becomes critical. Okay. Testing. Also, I really hope that I brought you some valuable knowledge. It's going to help you with your solutions, your challenges. I hope you got some tips and tricks from this presentation that are going to really help you out. And I truly hope the evolution of PowerShell wasn't a bunch of hot air. If it was, that's the way Darwin blows.
Oh, I was wah. So first of all, I'm going to round of applause for Steven today.
All right, who's posting sad trombone in the chat? Sean?
As we wrap up, I want to say, on a positive note, ICQ, what the hell is that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I want people to stay in touch with me. So I'm at Steven Judd on Twitter. This is my LinkedIn number. This is my Discord. Oh, so I put this in here. Does anyone understand the numbers? Recently, Discord is changing their usernames, and they're ditching the numbers. So sweet. And now not only do I understand them, but now I don't care about them because they're all going away. I'm in the PowerShell bridge not as often as I used to be, just because life and busy and whatever. Yes, I'm not on ICQ, but look at that low number. I mean, come on, man. 340? That's low. Here's my blog. Here's my GitHub link. And on the GitHub link underneath that is the code that I used in this presentation. I do not have the PowerPoint up there, mainly because how I did it with all of the branches and how I changed branches as I was going through, I thought that was clever. Turns out, yeah, it's clever, but then you can't put your presentation up there because it'll disappear as you change branches. So I didn't quite think that one all the way through. Anyway, yep, that's it. Let me get out of the presentation, I think. Yeah, go to the end so you can see that. And
Steven, I think you did a masterful job tonight. Thank you so much.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Any
and
final questions or comments?
Steven, I put a typo comment in the chat for you.
Okay.
So if we want to, we can go back to some of the chat and I think was it Corey?
how about we wrap up the recording and then we can.
Sure.
Yeah. So I was just going to say thank you to Steven for doing a masterful job tonight. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us. If you're watching this at home on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us in person. You can visit us at RTPSUG.com or on Meetup. You can look for the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. And then you can come and join us at the next meeting in person and you can ask questions of our speakers. If you're watching on YouTube, we hope you've enjoyed the content on our channel. We have about 120 other videos. We'd love for you to check it out. But most importantly, come and say hello at the next meeting. We'd love to see you. Thank you again to Steven, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And we're going to wrap it up here.